So I'm going to start, as I said I would, right on time. Mary Hunt here at Water with Diane New and Patrice Rupp, and we are in the Water office today. Patrice is our colleague from the University of Heidelberg and from the Brethren Voluntary Service Program. She's handling the tech issues as people under a certain age can do so well. We will end by 15 minutes after the hour. We're taking a little bit longer today than the usual hour, going to go an hour and 15 max. You know how I am about this. But the Zoom will be on afterwards for conversation. We have such a rich agenda today that it seems to me in order to really engage with one another, we need probably a few more minutes. But the Zoom will be on afterwards. We will close at 4:15 our time here on the East Coast. And we thank the Asian and Australian friends for getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to start, and to our European friends for staying up a little past their bedtime. So warm welcome to each and every. Water, as many of you know, is located in Silver Spring, Maryland. We've been here since 1983, but we know that there's a rich history of this place that took place long before we got here. We're not the first. With a commitment to working for justice, we begin, as we always do, with the land acknowledgement. This is something we've incorporated into our programs to remind ourselves of why we do what we do and what we need to do more of, given the systemic injustice Indigenous and other people of color face in this country. We at Water are on Indigenous land in Silver Spring, Maryland, the traditional and contemporary land of Piscataway and Anacostan peoples. We acknowledge the trauma and injustice toward Indigenous people that is deep in U.S. culture and history, and we join in efforts to eradicate it and to make reparations for the genocide involved. Water's work is aimed to bring about social justice, so consider for a moment, as we sit in silence, the Native people on whose land you are privileged to sit today. Let us take a moment in silence together. Thank you. Today's gathering of the Feminist Liberation Theologians Network is really something that has happened many, many times before. We have met for more than 25 years, usually at the annual meeting of the American Academy of Religion and the Society for Biblical Literature. We will do so again this year on November 17th, 2023, from 4 to 6 p.m. in San Antonio at that meeting. All are welcome, of course, but because not all can go to the AAR-SBL, and thanks to the COVID reset of our minds, we have devised this mid-year meeting as an opportunity to extend our outreach and to think together about some of the topics that have emerged from the network over the years. We collaborate with the Women's Caucus of the American Academy of Religion and Society of Biblical Literature, so I welcome those colleagues with special appreciation today. We also have a Google listserv that we use during the year. You're welcome to join that listserv by sending us a note at waterstaff@hers.com. We'll also send out a follow-up to this event, and now that we have your email, we'll assume that you may want more information on the Feminist Liberation Theologians Network, and you are more than welcome to be part of it. This is sponsored by Water, which is supported in turn by people like you. And we at Water believe in socializing resources, so we keep our work simple. We welcome everyone without fees. We charge nothing for our programs. And of course, we welcome your financial contributions. Our donors are very generous. So if you can donate, that's wonderful. We need it and appreciate it. If you cannot donate, you are just as welcome. We believe at Water that if we share, that's the big if we share, among us, there's enough. If we share, among us, there's enough. And we've been doing this for now 40 years, and so somehow it works that if we share, among us, there's enough. Please visit our website at www.waterwomensalliance.org for other Water programs and to find out more about the organization, and of course, to make a donation if you so wish. Let me turn to today's topic, which is the Feminist Liberation Theologians Network. It began in 1995 when Elizabeth Schussler-Fiorenza and I convened a gathering of theologians and activists at the Women's Ordination Conference meeting on discipleship of equals, breaking bread, doing justice. The next year in 1996, we floated a proposal and invited people from the US and Canada to get together. That was goal one. The second was to link across racial and ethnic lines. The third was to find out what similar networks existed around the world. And the fourth was to start where we were at that meeting, predominantly Christians, but be engaged with people from various religious traditions and those who have no religious affiliation at all. 25, now 26, almost 27 years later, we have much work to do, but we can rejoice in having produced some very exciting sessions. We've brought many people together. I estimate more than 1,000 in these meetings. Who knows who watches the videos subsequent to the meetings? We've got plenty of work to do ahead, however, and that's why we meet today. Today, we're focusing on two colleagues in different parts of the world as a way of seeing and thinking about how our work fits together and where it's going. We have a very simple agenda. The most popular part of our program is always the introductions, and we go around the big circle at the AR, and you maybe have 50 people there, and everybody tells who they are and so forth. But we're not going to do that here. We're going to do it in small groups instead. And then we'll have presentations by Monica Maher on Indigenous issues in Ecuador, and from Tracy McEwan on the International Survey of Catholic Women from Australia, and I will speak more about those very shortly. Then we'll, after the reports, have an opportunity in small groups to talk again about the content of the reports, but also what they mean for us, what they mean in terms of our work. And again, I'll be more specific about that shortly. And then we'll end with a plenary to look ahead at themes and projects to consider the meeting in November and other business as it may arise. We'll send you a written report after this, as we always do. And we're just delighted to have so many people from various and sundry places have the opportunity to share on these topics. Before we move, I invite you to do something very simple, which is to go onto your name on your Zoom and rename yourself so that you include, if you're able, what I've included, which is my preferred pronouns, where I am, both in terms of organization and in terms of geography. So you'll see it's Mary E. Hunt, she, her. I'm at Water in Silver Spring, Maryland in the US. And all you have to do is click on your name and or click on the three little dots above to the right-hand side of your screen. I don't know, it depends on how your computer works. And then just hit rename. And if you do that, you'll rename yourself and give us a little more information so we can all tell as we look at each person's name throughout the hour, where they are and how they would like to be referred to and what organization or connection they want to share with us. Okay. If you have trouble with it, don't sweat it. This is not a test. This is just to give us additional information. But if you can find that little, if you click on yourself, your picture of yourself, and those three little dots in the right-hand corner, and find rename, you can do this very easily. Okay. Shall we take 30 seconds to do it? It's just so nice to have more information, or if you just want to put where you're from, that can help too. And if you've never done this before, you will leave this meeting with a new skill. Okay, Margie O'Connor's got hers up. Veronica Dunn, she, her. All right, let's see. Nancy Corcoran, first in her class. Peggy Thompson's done this before. Yeah, whatever you want to put. Just a little more info will help us. And if you can't, don't worry about it. If you can't, but just the three dots, hit the three dots, and then there's a long list of things you can do. You got all kinds of power there. And then just hit rename. And then you go in and type it in and you're all set. Isn't it great to get a new skill? Okay, are we ready to move? Okay, one participant has changed the language to Spanish, so let's we do not have translation at this point, so I think that's not going to work, but we are now going to move into small groups to do introductions. Tell each other who's here. There are upwards of 40 people, so please tell each other who you are, where you are, and what you're doing in terms of this kind of work. It will just be about an 8-minute session. And if you would like to speak in Spanish rather than in English, please do not go to the group to which you're assigned. Just stay here on the screen and we'll have a Spanish-speaking group on the screen. Okay? So we'll see you back here in 8 minutes. It'll bring you back automatically. But in the meantime, meet some nice people doing some really important work, and they will meet you. Thanks, Patrice. Welcome back, everybody. Wasn't all I promised. Did you meet nice people and find out about interesting work? That's always the highlight for many people, that opportunity. Let us move right to our presentations. And I have the honor of introducing our two presenters. We will start with Monica Maher, who is resplendent in a kind of peach-colored sweater and a beautiful scarf from Ecuador that she has matched in a lovely way with the flowers that are so really just exquisite in Ecuador. Monica, every time I see you, I think of those beautiful flowers when I was there that were at every one of our meetings, just a new arrangement. So lovely to have you. Monica Maher is a theo-ethicist who has the distinction of having been Water's first intern, now more than 35 years ago. She is an ordained United Church of Christ minister. She is an accredited Buddhist teacher. She's part of the Grail, wonderful colleagues of ours over long years, working on peace and justice issues in Ecuador. Monica is the founding director of the Ecuadorian Faith Network, which does interfaith advocacy for sexual and reproductive rights. And she's going to report today, and as a longtime participant in the Feminist Liberation Theologians, a great example of the kind of work that we do that is so practical and so useful in the world. She's going to report on the recent UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and about her own collaboration with Kichwa women in Ecuador on their new School of Ancestral Medicine. So with great delight, I welcome Monica Maher as feminist liberation theologian par excellence, really doing this work in a wonderful integrated way, and just almost a walking parliament of the world's religions herself, but really engaged in the hard issues and always taking a prophetic stance on the hard issues. So Monica, welcome. Great to have you.
Thank you, Mary. Un beso. It's great to be here. It's a joy. It's an honor. And I want to share with you today, first about activism and advocacy at the international level, at the UN, as Mary mentioned, and at the local level. And I'll be highlighting the voices of Indigenous women of the Andean region. Allow me to begin with the words of a young Kichwa poet, Sewa Samai Kanyamar Maldonado. Knock at my door and let us travel between mountains and white doves. On the way, the black jaguar of the rocks will greet you. You will tell her of the mountain woman you carry inside. The wool claws of Grandmother Mountain will cover you. You will come down with the rain. You will run in the eyes of the water. You will love each scent, texture, and color of the wakas, the sacred spaces. The shouting from outside will fall into the sacred water. It will go away with the flowers, which flow with the river. You will walk with the wisdom of the moon. You will sit around an altar together with your own, your shadows, your desires, your fears. You, Samai, will return to yourself, to your rhythm, to your time. This poem is from Samai's anthology, To Look into the Eternity of the Heart. She's a psychologist, a member of Runas Feministas, which is a feminist collective of Kichwa women in Ecuador. And last year she spoke on a panel sponsored by the Grail at the 21st UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. This year she'll be attending an international leadership gathering for young women in Portugal, which is also sponsored by the Grail. And I welcome the other Grail women who are with us today. And for those of you who don't know the Grail, it's a 100-year-old international movement of women dedicated to spiritual search and social justice. And the Grail has NGO consultative status at the UN. So last month, I was there at the UN, met Mary Jelinek from Pax Christi, thanks to Mary Hunt. So we were there at the 22nd UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and as Grail and UFER, United for Equity and Ending Racism, which is a partner organization with the Grail, we sponsored a parallel trilingual event called Hitari Shun, Kichwa for Together for Tomorrow. We had 6 women Indigenous leaders from Bolivia, Brazil, Ecuador, Mexico, and the US. and I'll share with you highlights from just two of the presentations. Sophie Chipana Quispe, an Aymara theologian from the plurinational state of Bolivia, opened with poetic words about relational spiritualities as roads of healing the body, land, territory. Body, land, territory is a conceptual political proposal of indigenous community feminism, first articulated by Lorena Cabnal of the Maya Chinca peoples of Guatemala. Sophie Chipana addressed the need to heal the body territories, land territories of Andean communities through what she called opening to the warm, embodied embrace of healing memories of justice and millennial struggle. She beautifully described the way her community of indigenous women elders and theologians of Abya Yala look, quote, to drink from our own millennial ancestral wells that interweave relational spiritualities, which dignify the life of our people. We seek a path more our own, from which we can weave words of life, words felt, danced, sung, woven, touched, words in connection with the vital forces that are woven in our body territories and awaken cosmic consciousness, unquote. So Sophia spoke of ancestral wisdom and spirituality as ways of life, which recognize relations of reciprocity between people and the diverse sacred forces of nature. She urges us to recognize the plurality of religious and spiritual experiences of the Americas. And to close the panel, Jahaira Machoa Mandua of the Cocpan peoples of the plurinational state of Ecuador offered moving words about her commitment to continue to protect ancestral land territories, key to the survival of her people. She spoke with strength amidst her grief for her uncle, Eduardo Mandua, who was recently assassinated for his activism to defend the forests. And other stories of assassination of land rights defenders were widely shared at the in-person sessions in New York, including of the NGO Mining Working Group, where indigenous leaders present from Bolivia, Brazil, Ecuador, and Guatemala described militarized land grabbing, illegal mining, and oil drilling on ancestral territories, which are protected under international law, ILO Convention 169. The Mining Working Group advocates at the UN to support the indigenous leaders' demands and to address the injustices. So let me now turn from the international level to the local level to talk briefly about the School of Ancestral Medicine here in Ecuador in the Andean Highlands in Cotacachi. It's an initiative of the women's collective Hambi Mascari, which means searching for health in Kichwa. The school is a dream which has been held for a long time by women leaders, particularly the school's director, Marta Aritongo, who's a midwife. With others, she helped launch the school about 2 years ago in order to address obstetric violence and transmit ancestral knowledge and spirituality to the next generation of women. 11 students began studying with women elders. They studied plant medicine, ceremonies, ritual baths, midwifery, and dreams. And currently 9 women are carrying out practical internships in midwifery in the outlying rural areas with an elder mentor. And last Friday, which was the International Day of Midwifery, the school held a big celebration with over 100 people to affirm the importance of ancestral midwifery. Midwives came from the Napo region of the Amazon, as well as from the Afro-Ecuadorian communities on the coast. It was a beautiful day of exchange, conviction, and joy, which started with students leading a traditional Andean ceremony. The spirit is strong. In the words of Samai, we are spirit that mutates within air, fire, wind, water, Mother Earth, an infinite force that very few of us manage to experience fully. The efforts of Andean women, both at the international and local level, to affirm and strengthen their ancestral wisdom and spirituality is an integral part of their human rights struggle to protect life in all its forms in the face of climate injustice and extractive industries. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and the UN both are increasingly bringing attention to the right of indigenous communities to preserve and practice their ancestral spiritualities as part of the right to freedom of religion and belief. So this right to spirituality is inseparable from the right to cultural identity, the right to water, land, body territories, the collective right to exist, to live free of violence and to flourish as a people in harmony with all living beings. And as I close, I ask Patrice to help with a few images. I brought, they're photos of last week, Friday, where we had the big celebration in Cotacachi. This first slide this is actually of the permanent forum at the UN. Sophie Chipana is on the top. And these are the other women who presented from Ecuador, USA, Mexico, Brazil, and then Jahaira is on the bottom, the niece of forest defender Eduardo Mendua. Next slide. This was the beginning ceremony on Friday with the students leading the ceremony. So as you can see, they bring seeds. It's always on the ground, seeds and flowers and fruit, the 4 directions and the 4 elements. Next slide. And these are for the women who led, Carmen Moran, Inés Bonilla, Andrea Pacuar, and Luz Mila Bonilla were leading the ceremony. Next slide. This is a photo of the indigenous women from different parts of Ecuador. So you can see from the Afro-Ecuadorian region of the North Coast they came, also from the Amazon. And Marta, the director, is in the front row in blue, second from the left. Next slide. And this is a photo of, on the right, it's Fabiola Sanchez, who's a member of Runas Feministas with Samay. And they're working on sexual and reproductive rights from the perspective of their ancestral spiritualities. And in the middle is her mother, who's Ana Maria, and she's the elder midwife, teaching all of the women in the school. And the final slide, please. So this is a mural in the Women's Center. It says, "We grew wings, no more violence." And as you look at this slide, I offer final words from Samay. I am vital energy, one that grows moving. I am strength and confluence, a renewed energy standing up and exploding. My life is the spiral of the past and what comes ahead, tied up by the wisdom of a condor. I am the heart of the wind that nurtures your vital energy and makes the tremors of fear sound gently. I am like a spiritual song, touching all the memories of the universe. I have the beauty of a freshwater spring, of quiet mountains, vast and exalted lands, and silence. I am young and beautiful. I go on clothed by the land, moving on and on. Yupaichani. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Bueno, gracias a ti. Entiendo que hay personas que no entienden el inglés. Podríamos agregar algo, no sé. I'm not sure what to do with people who don't speak English at the moment, because we've just had a wonderful, brilliant presentation, powerful presentation. Monica, thank you. We'll make sure that they have access to it, hopefully in Spanish. We'll try to work something out, because I would hate to have them miss a word. Thank you so much for showing us how this is done. I think, and you'll see in the questions when we join in our groups to talk about how is it that we're doing things like this? What is it that we're doing that's similar to what you, and now as I move to Tracy, what you and Tracy are doing. So let us just take just a few seconds to make the transition in ourselves and as a group to Tracy McEwan, with great gratitude for the Indigenous persons whose work we have just witnessed. And thanks to you, Monica. Well, it's breathtaking, but on we go. I have the great honor of introducing my friend and colleague, Tracy McEwan from Australia, a feminist theologian. She and her University of Newcastle colleague, also a friend and colleague, part of the Feminist Liberation Theologians Network, all of them. Kathleen McPhillips headed a landmark study of Catholic women worldwide. It's called the International Survey of Catholic Women, or ISCW, the International Survey of Catholic Women. And don't be worried if you don't get all the details here. This video will be available, and we'll also publish notes. So you'll have all the information that you need following this. The findings of this important survey are really concrete data about Catholic women's views of a patriarchal church. These good women analyzed 17,200 responses from women in 104 countries. And Tracy recently presented Pope Francis with his own personal, and I presume autographed copy of the report. So there are no excuses now for calling women the strawberries on the cake or not understanding what Catholic women want. He has it between soft covers. Earlier today, Tracy and Kath, who I'm not going to go into all Tracy's academic credentials, but are both very highly regarded scholars, both in Australia and throughout the world, had an audience of 1,500 people who signed up to discuss their findings. It was at 5 o'clock this morning, so some of us in the US didn't get there, but we were fortunate to have that coming as well. And so we're additionally fortunate to be a small group with Tracy to hear her reflections on the process and especially the results of the survey. So Tracy McEwan, it's yours now to share with us your tremendous work, and congratulations on this International Survey of Catholic Women. We look forward to hearing your reflections. Tracy McEwan.
Thanks so much, Mary. And before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the country that I'm on. I'm in southern Sydney, a place called Miranda, and I'm what's now called Miranda, but it's the land of the Darawal speaking people, and they're the traditional custodians of the land of this area of Sydney. And I'd like to pay respect to the elders past and present and emerging, and acknowledge that this land has never been ceded. So I've got some slides to show you. Of course, the picture of me with Pope Francis is on there as well. So we'll just start with the first one, if that's okay, Patrice. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share a link to the survey report in the chat. So you can click on that and you'll be able to access the report through the University of Newcastle library. So just to give you a little bit of background about why the survey was done. So it was commissioned by the women's network, Catholic Women Speak. So Catholic Women Speak is a network that was started by Professor Tina Beattie. I think back in 2015, she was saying last night. And it's a group of Catholic women who wish to stay in the church. You know, so they welcome diversity, but you have to be open to discussing. So it's not for discussing the issues, I guess, you know. So they've got a Facebook group and they have published 2 books now. And so they're women in the church, but they, you know, are open to critiquing the church, I guess. So they're not women who want to leave. They're women who are happy to be there, who welcome critique and open dialogue. So they commissioned the report back in late 2021, and we got ethics approval support from the University of Newcastle, and it was open between the 8th of March and the 29th of April 2022. And in September 2022, Tina and Kath and I wrote a report that was submitted to the Vatican for the upcoming synod on synodality. That was the purpose of the report, to seek to create that submission. And as Mary mentioned, we had this really overwhelming response. We had more than 17,000 women respond to the survey. There was 29 closed questions, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute, and 3 open questions where women could express their views, and they did. And, you know, some women wrote like long essays. So we were real, and so Kath and I thought it was really important to, publish this, an in-depth sociological report, and that's what the link in the chat will direct you to, this with this beautiful cover that we found on Splash. So the beautiful artwork there. And we were surprised by the number of responses we got, and we continue to be surprised by the response to the survey. I think Pope Francis invited women to speak, but maybe he didn't think that women would speak as strongly as they have. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit more about it. So then maybe the next slide, Patrice. So this report provides an in-depth qualitative and quantitative analysis of the closed questions and the open questions. So the closed questions were measured, used a Likert scale, which is a scale of agreement. So people could see either strongly agree, like through to strongly disagree with statements that were focused around 3 themes. Sorry, I'm a little bit incoherent because I'm so tired. 5 a.m. here in Australia. So we asked questions about identity, reform, and women's faith experience during the COVID-19 pandemic in those closed questions. And then we asked 3 open questions where women could reflect on the closed questions, or they could share new insights. And from this qualitative and quantitative analysis, we had 20 main findings and 14 recommendations. And again, you can read those in more detail in the report. That's me, the photo's me. Kath made me put that in the presentation because it's a great photo of me presenting the report to Pope Francis. And what you can't see there is I also manage a podcast with some women from WATAC and the Grail here in Australia, and it's a podcast of women preaching, and underneath the copy of the report is a copy of our book that we've just released, In Her Voice. So on his bedside table, not only does he have the report, he has a copy of Australian Women Preach's book with some great sermons of women preaching. So I want to, tell me if I'm going over time, Mary. As Mary said, the International Survey of Catholic Women is groundbreaking. It represents this really significant opportunity to hear the voices of women across a range of issues. So I like to think our analysis is a little bit like putting the pieces of a puzzle together. The open responses in particular provided some really important information about the experiences of women. And so we've spent like the last period of time, doing the synod, submitting the report to the synod, and then this sociological report. So what the research team is doing now is digging deeper into the data to more fully understand the situation of women in the church. So in the coming months, we'll be working on a variety of case studies, including an analysis of respondents from the Global South, and I'm going to give you a glimpse of that in a minute. And the case studies cover themes that emerged. So I'm now going to share with you some information about 2 key themes: women in leadership and the organisation of and culture of leadership and governance in the church. They were 2 themes that emerged. And I'm going to briefly share with you our early analysis of the cohort from the Global South, because I think it does what Mary was saying, in that this data is so important because it's this women are shouting, and we've been shouting for a long time. And I think, so much of the work of feminism is actually establishing that there's a problem. So the next slide. So I think sorry, I forgot to say that was a snapshot of Catholic women. The next slide, please, Patrice. Sorry, it's the tiredness. So respondents were asked 3 closed questions related to women's leadership in the church, and there was a majority of agreement that women should be fully included at all levels of church leadership. Women preachers should be able to give the homily at Mass, hello, and women should be eligible for ordination to the priesthood. So there was majority support in all those three statements. Younger respondents, however, were less likely to agree with the statements about women in leadership. And this was mostly due to a strong relationship between attitude and age in Western English-speaking countries. So while women in leadership was a common theme in open responses, but there were a variety of views about what the full inclusion of women might look like. There were some respondents who linked women's full inclusion in leadership with the ordination of women into the diaconate and or priesthood, but most called for the gifts and existing ministries of women to be accepted and valued. This surprised us a little bit, but that was what came out of the data. So many of these responses highlighted the necessity for greater recognition and visibility of the role women already play in the church context. Some respondents made claims of being underappreciated and overlooked in the church, despite already holding a position of leadership. So responses consistently expressed the need to acknowledge women's leadership and participation beyond so-called voluntary women's work. Some responses connected women's participation in church ministry, leadership and governance with gospel values and the ministry of Jesus. Respondents who advocated for the ordination of women in open responses often made connections with baptism and the capacity of women to stand in persona Christi. For some respondents, however, their support was associated with their personal vocation or call from God. There were open responses that were highly critical of women's inclusion in the diaconate and or their ordination of women. Opposition was most often associated with polarizing the church or adding women to an already flawed clerical system. Many of these responses called for a new model of ministry and leadership in the Catholic Church. There were a few women who argued against the ordination of women, often claiming women ineligible because of church doctrine. Most of these responses were from Western English-speaking countries. So the next slide, please, Patrice. Another of the main themes was the organisation and culture of leadership and governance in the Catholic Church. There was a high level of consensus that the way power and authority is shared between clergy and laity is problematic. Respondents repeatedly noted their frustration with the lack of accountability in financial decision-making. Responses addressed the necessity for transparent financial administration at a global, diocesan and parish level. Some noted the harm caused by corrupt governance, particularly those who are already marginalised. There was a significant majority, so more than 80% of respondents agreed that clericalism, which we defined as the misuse of authority and power by male clerics, is damaging the Catholic Church. And there was a high level of agreement that the church needed to do more to address sexual abuse and other forms of abuse, including abuses of power and spiritual harm. So several open responses expressed disappointment and anger at the lack of specific and timely action on the part of the institutional church regarding situations of abuse and misconduct. And I've just got two really powerful quotes there from the first from a young respondent from Germany who asked, is it really moral or ethical to stand behind an organisation that has such huge flaws and covers up such horrific crimes like the abuse of children? So 18 to 25-year-old from Germany there. And a young respondent from Peru explained, I love being Catholic, but I'm ashamed of the lack of energetic and categorical condemnation of sexual and power abuses. So 26 to 40-year-old there from Peru. So hearing these voices that are emerging from the survey is a powerful contribution to the understanding of women in church life and Catholicism. And just the next slide, I'm going to give you a preview of what's happening with the Global South cohort. And just to share with you, this research came out when I gathered with in the Vatican. I was with the women ambassadors and some key women who worked in the Vatican, and a number of them said to me, "Oh, this is a Western women's problem. Like, you know, it's not. This isn't something which is shared through the global South. You know, that it's Western women who are driving change." So one of the first things I did when I got home was made an analysis of the global South, and what we saw is in the global South there was a stronger sense of Catholic identity, stronger agreement for women in leadership, stronger agreement for women preaching, and stronger support for reform. So there we go.
Tracy, does that finish your presentation?
That's it.
Great, perfect. Okay. Wow. Just like Monica's, thank you so much. And it really excites me to see both of you doing this work in the context of your feminist liberation theological commitments. And as part of this network, I am very proud and delighted to be associated with both of you and to know that this work is being done by our colleagues. So thank you very, very much. We will, I'm sure nobody has any questions or any comments to make. So no, I'm teasing. We will move into, yes, applause up on the, put your applause up. We will move to our small groups. This is marvelous. I mean, this is exciting. This is why we do this work, to have this kind of serious real world impact. So what I would like to do with Patrice's gracious assistance is to move us back to small groups. They'll be different this time, but to small groups to focus on two questions. We only got about 8 minutes to do this, so you gotta think and talk fast. But two questions that are really important on the heels of these marvelous presentations. And Tracy, I'm so glad you put up the link to the report, because people will want to read that in great detail. And just the deepest thanks to you and to Kath and your colleagues for this work. You've really done a great service, and it's exciting to see. Here are the questions, and the questions will be in the chat. How do these two examples of feminist liberation theology in action relate to your work? We can ask lots of questions after we finish our official presentations. We can talk with each other and with the speakers, but how does this dovetail with the work you're doing? What are you doing that's connected in some direct way with the needs of an unjust world? That's really, the question of how can we be useful? How is what we're doing, whether we're doing it in spiritual direction or in peace work or in campus ministry or in hospice work or in queer work, whatever it is, how can we be useful? That's question one. What are you doing that reminds you of what Tracy and Monica are doing? What are you doing? And the second is, as the network moves ahead, what are some of the key issues that we need to consider that are both timely and impactful in the ways that Monica and Tracy have shown us? What are the themes that we need to look at? And what are the key issues? Because we'll be setting up our agenda not only for November, but going forward. So those are the questions. How does your work dovetail with the examples we've just had? And secondly, as we move forward, what are the key themes given the needs of the world? What are the key themes that we need to be working on? So if you will move into the small groups quickly, we will reconvene in 8 minutes, maybe 10 if the thing says 10, but we'll reconvene in 8 or 10 minutes, and then we'll have an opportunity for plenary conversation, both on these questions, which are my real concern at this moment, as well as, of course, the substance of the reports. And then I'll invite you when we get back together to put anything you want in the chat. Don't put it in the chat of your small group because we won't get it for the whole chat. So just hold on to it until we come back together. Okay? Enjoy your small groups. And again, thank you to Tracy and to Monica. Thank you all for being part of this. I realize it's not enough time, but if you had to choose between one presentation or the other, I'm sure you would make my choice, which is both. So I'm delighted that we're still together. We will be a little bit over our time, but not much. Let me again thank our speakers, and let me invite everybody to do one thing at the same time. And that is to go down to the bottom of your screen where it says chat and push the button and it'll say to everyone, and type your message to everyone. And what we want to know is a very brief sentence or phrase about the work that you're doing that dovetails with what Tracy and Monica showed us of their work. That's number one. What are you doing? What's your work that dovetails? It could be preaching, it could be campus ministry, it could be spiritual direction, it could be architecture, it could be science. But what's your work that's gave you a sense of of your work being connected to their work? And then the second one is key issues for us as a network going forward. Just everybody do it at once and we'll take care of it. Somebody said refugee work. Yes, Denise, Monica Maher does have roots in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I can assure you, she'll tell you about that privately. But if everybody does it, we really will get a wonderful listing. So please we're going to take just a minute of silence to do this. Everybody do it. And we will have 45 inputs from this group. So we see migration, gender, anti-racism, chaplaincy, being fully alive, theological education. There are so many. Be sure to get yours in. And it's out of this list that we'll take some of our themes for future work. But also let us know very specifically what you think we should be doing. Yes, Nancy Corcoran, always anti-racism. Okay, does anybody else need a minute? You can keep doing this while we turn. I want to turn just for a few minutes because it's going to be so frustrating if we don't. Yes, increase the visibility of Waters' work. You can do that, Karen. That's help us out. Go ahead, keep typing, but I want to open the floor for just a few comments, especially with reference to the presentations or to future work. So yes, Judy Heffernan, liturgy, it's your calling and you do it so brilliantly. The floor is open. You may use the reaction button to raise your hand to make a comment. For anybody who may have missed the presentations, this will all be on video. You'll be able to access this in a few days when we get the video cleaned up. And we will also beg or borrow or steal from our presenters their information that we may, if they, with their permission, whatever we can share with you, we will. So the floor is open. Please go ahead, whoever's first. That would be Judy Heffernan.
I just wanted to say that when I was a little girl in Catholic school, the sisters told us that if you saw good happening around the world and you felt called to that, that was a sign of the Holy Spirit working. And I never felt that so much as I did today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Judy Heffernan. And for those who don't know, Judy Heffernan is an ordained Catholic woman priest, and she is the poster girl for Catholic women priests, being on a billboard that's been shown all over the country. I could put it up if I had to, Judy. I have it right here on my computer. She is the poster girl for women priests and does phenomenal work, including with the Southeast Pennsylvania Walk group, the Women's Ordination group, who recently had a witness on the occasion of the Chrism Mass. So they do wonderful creative things. Who's next?
Let me just say, Judy was ordained before being ordained as a woman was popular.
She's a pioneer.
43 years ago tomorrow.
Wow, right from third grade. Go
That's
ahead,
right.
who's next? Early vocation, who's next? Yes, that would be Rosemary Ganley from Peterborough, Ontario.
Okay, well, I want to propose something really radical. I think I'm coming out of battle fatigue, and I want to propose a women's strike, an international women's strike. It worked for the Greeks, didn't it? We withdraw all our leadership, all our service in terms of church work until there's some radical movement. Last night, Mary talked about breadcrumbing, small bits of progress.
I got from Tracy. Wait, that I quoted Tracy. Tracy was the person who taught me about breadcrumbing.
Okay, that's a concept I love.
Yeah, Tracy, do you want to speak to the question of breadcrumbing very quickly?
Yeah, breadcrumbing's my theory, which it's interesting because I haven't been talking about it broadly because the focus has been on the survey and I've tried to be speaking about women's voices. And so I haven't written on this yet. But for those of you that don't know, breadcrumbing is a form of coercive control that's used in dating relationships. So it's that idea that you connect with somebody, in one of those apps like Tinder or Grindr or whatever people use, and you get that initial connection, and you might have a great week together or something, and then they just ignore you for a while, and then there's then you get a text from them, been busy with work, let's have dinner, and that you connect again, and it's really strong, and you have this great time, and then nothing happens. And so my theory is that, and it's a form of coercive control, and it keeps, the person that's on the receiving end, kind of dangling, they're waiting for the next breadcrumb to fall. I think it comes from the Hansel and Gretel, analogy, where they're dropping the breadcrumbs. And so I think that's what the Catholic Church is doing to women at the moment. We had the the statements about being a catechist and being able to be an acolyte, things that women have been doing for years, mind you. And then, so there was a few breadcrumbs there, and now we're, women can vote, which is great, but again, it's a few breadcrumbs, which women can vote,
Right.
and where are these women being selected from, and all those kind of things. But I have a thing about the Rosemary's global strike, and I think that global strikes might only work in some situations, because in a lot of contexts the Catholic Church is the only provider of social services. And so women who are already in like situations of poverty and, maybe it's not, I don't know, like I think, certainly women in a country like Australia could strike without any drama at all, and probably in the US as well. But I think it needs to be contextual.
Right.
Thank you. And we'll quote you on breadcrumbing now that it's published. Who's next? I just want to make two comments. One is the importance of two things I got out of today: the importance of survey research in the doing of theology. I think that's a real takeaway from today, the importance of good data for doing theology and developing theological perspectives, the use of survey research. And the second, and that was particularly to Tracy and particularly to Monica, the role of interreligious sophisticated understandings, both in terms of church and society, or of religion and society. And I think what you demonstrated today was the extent to which being an interreligious person yourself, not just reading about it, but literally living in a very interreligious way, allows for another perspective to emerge in terms of what's going on in a bigger picture. So that interreligiosity and the sophistication of it, not just in a kind of simple way, but the sophistication that you bring to it, I really appreciate that too. So let's hear from one or two other people, and then we'll call it a wrap and have the Zoom open for continued conversation, but so that people don't feel they missed something. Who's next? Anybody else with a comment? And we'll take that global strike under consideration, Rosemary. Don't worry about that. Yes, go ahead. That would be Chris from Ecuador. Or is that Chris leaving? Anybody else before we wrap up? If not, I will thank everybody kindly, and our two speakers really with deep gratitude, and I'll sense with both of you that we just saw the tip of the iceberg. We just got a little snippet of each of your projects and of your commitments and of the impact of your projects and commitments on many people, ourselves included. So thank you for bringing us a snippet, and we look forward to much more. I think from what's in the chat, we will have a wonderful way of pulling together an agenda, not only for our November meeting, but also for a future mid-year meeting like this. Does everybody like the mid-year meeting? I think this is a great idea that came out of COVID. So with that, I will officially close us and invite you to look at our website, www.waterwomensalliance.org, for the video, and look forward in your email to the report. And I ask you to stay well and to do justice. So with that, let us call it a day. And I hope, Tracy, you get to go back to bed. And I hope those who are at a later hour get a little beauty sleep, as it were. And we will close now, but the Zoom will remain open for as long as people want to converse. So thank you. Have a great time.